Hello world, my name is Leo and today we are reviewing slash discussing Neva, developed by Nomada Studios and published by Devolver Digital. If Nomada sounds familiar, that's probably because you've heard of their previous title, Gris. Gris is a beautiful, surreal puzzle platformer all about grief. I played it back in 2019, and to this day, it remains one of my favorite games of all time. The visuals, the music, the emotions, all of it coalesced together to form a truly one-of-a-kind experience for me. So when Nomada announced that they were making another game, it immediately had my attention. Neva looked just as beautiful as Gris, it sounded just as beautiful, and it looked just as emotional as the trailer depicted a giant wolf dying to some kind of darkness and a relationship blossoming from that tragedy between a girl and the puppy that was left behind. Having played it now, I can tell you that Neva does live up to all of that. It feels like a natural evolution of Gris, while forging its own identity through subtle differences in the art and music, and entirely new additions to the gameplay, such as combat and your companion. Did it hit as hard as Gris for me? No, but I wasn't really expecting it to, and in no way did that stop it from being an incredible experience in its own right. So let's talk about that experience as we discuss what it's like to journey through the world of Neva. Neva sees you assume the role of a girl named Alba as she cares for her dog companion, the game's namesake, Neva. Together, they travel across the land, fighting against a darkness threatening to corrupt and consume everything it touches. Right away, the first thing you'll notice is the art style, which is absolutely stunning. Conrad Rosé did the art here, just like in Greece, and he continues to prove himself to be just phenomenal at his craft. Speaking of Greece, I do want to draw comparisons here, because at a glance, one might think that the art styles are exactly the same, but there are key differences here. The biggest difference is the color. In Greece, because color was used as a core part of the symbolism, it had an evolving color palette, starting out very minimalist and then introducing colors in waves. In Neva, right from the get-go, the palette is vibrant and colorful, with bright pinks and greens, deep blues and reds, all of it looking beautiful all the time. This wider color palette also allows for a greater amount of detail in the environments, and this is further enhanced by having more depth or distance in some of the scenes, like here in this field, or more dynamic lighting, like here in these woods. The world of Neva is one that feels lived in and alive, and that's reflected in this art direction. It's also reflected in the game's cutscenes and animations, which are all done with such a level of fluidity and expression that it never fails to draw you in. Visuals are only half of the aesthetic framework though, and Neva would, of course, feel incomplete without the beautiful OST done by Berlinist, and again, I want to draw a comparison to Greece here. Greece's music depicted a world that sounded like it was standing still or holding its breath. It was the perfect match for the more surreal, almost vignette-like areas that Greece took place in. In Neva, the music always feels like it's moving, matching the pace of whatever's going on screen. This feeling of movement is brought on by a slightly different instrumentation and use of instrumentation. For example, the piano tends to have more active melodies than it did in Greece. And the OST overall features more instruments that further reflect that movement, like an electric guitar and something that possibly could be a mandolin or a lute. The OST is also able to take more liberal advantage of vocals in its music, again, unlike in Gris, since in that game vocals were used as part of the symbolism just like with color. Much like the world, the music feels alive, and it accentuates every emotion elegantly, from happiness to sadness, and desperation to triumph. Out of everything in my experience with Neva, the gameplay stood out as being the most different from Gris, both with how it evolves its platforming mechanics and with how it adds entirely new combat and companion systems on top of it. With platforming, you now have a double jump, you can climb, and you have a dodge that can be used mid-air as a forward dash. Those already allow for Neva to have a wider breadth of mechanical complexity when it comes to platforming puzzles. However, Neva also feels like it takes more advantage of environmental design in its puzzles, and along with some reoccurring elements, each section of the game has a signature mechanic to it. An early example of this is when you have to try to find paths through thorns, hitting the various enemies creating them to slowly clear your way. I don't want to talk about the other mechanics in too much detail for spoilers' sake, but just know that there are sections of this game that blend environmental design and puzzle design in a truly breathtaking manner. It's brilliant and immersive, and I couldn't get enough of it. Next, when it comes to Neva's combat, Nomada took a very basic approach. Alba can do a 3-hit combo with her sword, she has the aforementioned dodge, there's a ground slam, and if you get 6 hits in without taking damage, you can heal a point of health if you had taken damage beforehand. It's clear that this combat is intentionally designed to be simple, so as to not have it distract from the presentation or emotions, and it works for what it is. The feel of combat is something that took some getting used to for me. The animations look flowy, as I said before, but swinging the sword felt slower than it should have. As I spent more time with it though, it actually started to remind me a bit of Hyper Light Drifter's combat. I began to realize that combat isn't meant to feel slow, it's meant to feel deliberate, and under this mindset, I enjoyed the combat a lot more. On top of this, there's actually a pretty decent amount of enemy variety here. It's nothing special, but considering what kind of game this is, I was genuinely surprised that each chapter seemed to introduce at least one new enemy. There's also boss fights in Neva, as well as some set-piece moments, and they're all really great. Each one is artistically portrayed, animated, and choreographed, and they deliver on being the emotional climax of each chapter. Now, across all of these systems, the platforming, the combat, all of it, there's another factor that comes into play that I mentioned at the top of this section, Neva herself. Having a companion in this game allowed Nomada to tie the story, themes, and gameplay together in creative ways. So let's actually talk about that next. The story, the themes, and Neva's role in all of it. As I said before, this game is all about Alba taking care of Neva as she grows. Each chapter takes place in a different season, and as the seasons change, so does Neva. Throughout these changes, this game does a fantastic job at conveying the bond between Alba and Neva. For one thing, there's a dedicated button to call out to Neva, and the voice actress for Alba recorded this call in a wide variety of ways. If you spam the button, there's a surprising amount of different takes that Alba will cycle through to make her sound more natural.
Neva.
This call is also situation dependent. If a level takes place at night, Alba will whisper when she calls out. And if she and Neva get separated, Alba will call out with a worried tone.
Neva? Neva?
It's truly impressive how much effort was put into this single mechanic. As a cherry on top, if you hold the call button down while next to Neva, you pet her, and as we all know, that's an instant 10 out of 10 right there. But this isn't the only way the bond between Alba and Neva is shown. As mentioned before, Neva plays a role in gameplay, and as Neva grows, her role changes and becomes more active. When the game first begins, Neva is just a puppy, and you have to help her over cliffs and gaps, and free her when she gets trapped. Later, as an adolescent or adult wolf, she is able to help herself, and even helps you with both combat and platforming. For example, at one point, you get the ability to send Neva flying forward, which can be used to hit enemies and also to activate platforms that you need to cross gaps. There are more mechanics later on that, again, I don't want to spoil, but my point is that these mechanics and the framing of the story in this way all contribute to organically melding the main theme, parenthood, into the core DNA of Neva. The journey of parenthood is a long, emotional one. It ranges from the work needed to take care of someone who can't take care of themselves, to the joy of seeing them grow and doing activities with them, to the pain of seeing them get hurt or being separated from them. And at the heart of that journey is the bond forged between parent and child. Through Neva, this journey and this bond are portrayed in such a way that you not only see it, but you feel it. Despite me not being a parent, and therefore not resonating with this theme as much, I felt my connection with Neva as I cared for her and watched her grow. It's creative, immersive, and it's just extremely smart design on the part of Nomada. I want to round things out by acknowledging something about this review. I spent a lot of time comparing Neva to Gris, which to some could be a bad thing, because Neva should be reviewed on its own merits. However, to some extent, I think these comparisons are necessary. Neva is an experience that is clearly built on the foundations that Gris laid out, both in its aesthetics and its gameplay. It also shows how those foundations can be iterated on and evolved into experiences that stand on their own. In making these comparisons between Neva and Gris, I'm not saying that one game is better than the other. On the contrary, I think that in these games, both of them, Nomada has cemented their unique identity into the gaming landscape, one that is made up of emotional storytelling through art, sound, and interactivity. Furthermore, I think it's very telling that both Gris and Neva won the award for Games for Impact at the Game Awards in the years that each game came out. Neva proves that Nomada is not just a one-hit wonder. It works as an amazing, beautiful, and compelling experience in its own right, and as a companion piece to what came before. Its new mechanics are used to not only make the game feel new, but to enhance the themes and emotions for the player. I enjoyed it immensely, and I highly recommend it. Thank you everybody so much for checking out my review for Neva. please feel free to leave in the comments below what you thought about this review. If you have any thoughts on what I've said, feel free to let me know your own thoughts on Neva if you've played it yourself. I would love to hear different opinions and perspectives on how your own experience went. And I did end up playing Neva for the channel, and I will be linking the playlist for that Let's Play in the description below if you would like to follow along to how I originally experienced it. Other than that, my Blue Sky, Ko-Fi, and Discord links are in the description below. And yeah, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, ringing the bell, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye!